right, Commissioner Lober.
Okay, so I don't know if perhaps we should have Sheriff Ivey just come back up real quick to determine what language he might propose. Sheriff?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lover, I think I came up with an idea. I think that we'll work out the little definition things we have, and then I would pass this through, but I think right here, I would like to, we'll put this in, but I want to come back in 6 months, because we have some time, with the sheriff and the staff getting together and getting us some kind of idea on levels of violations.
I'm okay with that, but my thought is just at least to make the option known. Do you want to run by her what we had discussed?
Sure.
And if she doesn't want to do that, that's okay.
To her point, though, we would be more than happy to work with staff and come up with levels of violations in that regard. What I kind of kicked around in some language is any violation of an applicable law, ordinance, statute, or administrative regulation that is reasonably deemed by the investigating agency to put animals' health or well-being at risk.
That'd probably be like the ones, some of the stuff you'll come back with, but I think give it, because we can pass this, because there's that time limit on it, and that will give the time for the research to come back with that, because I think that's going to be a really important part on this.
So I'm totally receptive to that. Our team will work very well with our attorneys and make sure we have that together.
And I'll just put on the record, if it's anything along those lines, I'll support it, whether it's now or in 6 months.
Okay, and then you guys can figure out what causes harm and then what is just minor things, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Madam
So I don't know if we should continue, or if we went through all the changes that you'd proposed.
I think you guys missed one.
Did we miss one?
I mean, when you were looking through it.
There was one,
It
I
was
thought. Oh.
page 8, item 2 at the top.
I just question if that was necessary. I just thought it was wordy. We can leave it in if you want. I just was just doing my little,
I defer to Ms. Bentley on that, because that one, it's
That is up to the board.
any ramification taking it out.
No.
All right, it's dead, that's fine. I have no problem taking that out. It doesn't seem to be operative language anyway.
okay, we're turning this into a short story now.
Okay.
Okay, and then you got the ones on page 9, just that italicized, I think can come out now. I don't think that's necessary. We were doing that when,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
then
that's fine.
F, I'm not sure F is something that's necessary at this point either, because we have just defined pet stores, and you have to have a license to sell them. So we can leave it if you want, but I just don't think it was a necessary.
In an abundance of caution, I'd rather leave it. You know, it doesn't seem to hurt anything, but again, Ms. Bentley, what do you think on that? I just don't want to miss something, and
If you're concerned about retail sales in any location, then this would need to stay in.
yeah, I'd like to leave it in.
Okay, well, let me ask you a quick question. Don't they have to have a license to do retail sales anyways?
A license in terms of
To
a
sell in
business
a
tax
public
receipt?
place?
Or-
Yeah. I think you have to have a license if you're going to open up a business and sell.
Not at a flea market. I don't think so.
You don't think you would?
I don't know
I don't
one way or
know.
the other, to be honest, with the flea market. I've never dealt
I
with the
guess
flea
it's up
market
to the flea
business.
market. You know.
I mean, this covers us either way.
Okay. All right. And then in number 1G1, I just think it should say all found to be in violation of this section.
That's fine, I'm happy with that, too.
I knew you would be. That's a lawyer thing I caught
Yeah.
there, right?
You can say any and all if you want.
Okay. Okay, that's what I had. I think the others are just kind of definitions.
I had one. I was kind of afraid to propose any change. Actually, mine's relatively trivial, just to clarify something. I think it reads this way anyway, but to avoid some ambiguity, it was brought up to me. Page 8 on both yours and mine, little c sub 1, between the words obtained and from, I wanted to insert the word directly, and I already ran it by Ms. Bentley. And it does not require a re-advertisement or anything like that. My concern with it is I don't want someone to say, well, the dog may have originated there, but I got it from this guy that operates the dog meat stand over on the corner. But it doesn't count because he got it from someone else. I think that just protects us from someone trying to play games and weasel around the regulation.
Okay.
That's it. Mine's easy.
What was the issue that, sorry, wrong button. I've only been doing this for 4.5 years. What was the issue that you took exception that she wanted to change, and you said you wouldn't go there?
With respect to limiting commercial breeders or USDA licensed breeders, I believe the language was, only if they've lost their license, because in essence, if they've lost their license, they can't sell anyway, so we're not really regulating anything at that point.
Did you resolve that, or you?
Yes.
Yeah, but on that, they would have gotten their license back and would still say, nope, you lost them in that amount of time. But I'm still fine now if we go
Okay.
ahead and get the definition of violations, because that's where I had
Right.
some heartburn over, because
Yeah,
there
I'm-
are minor violations and there are.
I mean, anyone can pull the record, the minutes, or the video and use it against me if I change my tune down the road, but I'm just telling you flat out, what I'm looking for are issues that pertain to the health or well-being of animals. If it doesn't affect the health or well-being of an animal,
I know.
I don't care for purposes
I
of
know.
this ordinance. If it does, though, I care a lot. I don't want to draw a line and say, well, okay, it's one broken leg, so therefore that doesn't rise to the level. We need 3 or more broken legs. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Oh, I know that, Commissioner Lober, but you know as well as I do when we write a law.
Sure.
If we don't define it real well, it can get abused or it can get ignored. So that's, I think if we work on the degrees of violations and we define that a little better.
Yeah, the one thing I would point out, though, as it occurs to me now, since we do have a 12-month grace period, we may want to come back in 18 months instead of 6, because quite frankly, nothing's going to happen for the first 12 anyway.
Well, except they're going to define the violations for
Oh, I
us to
see, I
put
see.
in
You want to
here.
do that prior to it? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can revisit
That
in
gives them
6.
a little time to come back with the violations and make sure we like it.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Should we just go through at this point, maybe public comment, and then,
Will do.
okay.
Okay. We have 14 cards. Bill Jacobson, and after Bill, we have Pam LaSalle. And when you come up, if you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Bill Jacobson, 3812 St. Armand Circle, Melbourne, Florida. I've watched a number of pet stores open and close during my 22 years in business. It's called free market enterprise. I trust that most of the commissioners appreciate the significance of that. This is a tough business, and those that don't do things right are going to fail. Current regulations and market conditions appear to work pretty well as they are. We often refer people to the shelters. I have no problem with people going to rescues, breed-specific shelters, etc., even though they're unregulated and not bound by the Florida limit law, which essentially is 14-day pre-existing condition, 1-year debilitating congenital hereditary defect. It's not lifetime insurance. God, I wish it was. I wish I could guarantee health. I just guarantee we do our heartfelt best to minimize health risk. Anyway, it's called freedom of choice. Imagine that freedom of choice of where you purchase your puppy in the United States of America. So at 71 years of age, I'm, at least prior, I don't know about the ordinance today, but it would have forced me out of business after 22 years. 6 employees would lose their jobs, the county would lose the tax revenue, while enhancing opportunities for the unregulated market, as what's happening in other parts of the country. May I respectfully suggest it's time for the county commissioners to move on to county development projects, and may I humbly suggest it's time for this to stop, either pass no ordinance or at least no overly restrictive ordinance. With that, commissioners, my business, my family, especially my son, who I hope to turn the business over to someday, and our employees' jobs are in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam? After Pam, Diana Webb?
Pamela Salviera. I believe we have Florida statutes that take care of animal welfare, and I believe that's how the sheriff could go in and examine the pet store to start with. But basically, I have the same position that I had 3 months ago. This is USDA responsibilities, and we should let the USDA do what they do. There's no way the sheriff, there's going to be any kind of violations or regulatory authority where the sheriff can go to Ohio to stop bad dog breeders. So I really would, we need to appreciate our organization of government, and if citizens in our county are upset with the performance of a federal agency, perhaps the board could reach out to the federal agencies and maybe our congressman and do something through them. This isn't y'all's purview. This is not, what goes on out of this county is not the responsibility of this government here. I just really wish y'all would reconsider this. I think what y'all are passing has so many unintended consequences. You know, y'all go on and on about all the minor violations. A restaurant we eat at had minor violations. They got closed down for a few hours. They're back in business and we can eat with them. So I'm just saying, I think there's just a lot of unintended consequences. Y'all have gone through so many changes, I don't really know what y'all have come up with tonight. I know the part about where people can meet in the public to sell and restrictions on that. You know, that there may be some issues there as far as public safety that I don't think maybe people have contemplated. But I would just implore y'all to let the respective levels of government have their control over issues. The reason USDA has it is because it's an interstate commerce issue, not a Brevard County issue. Anyway, I appreciate y'all's time. Thanks.
Thanks. Did you have a question?
Very briefly, comment.
Okay.
Just a very brief comment on a couple items that were just mentioned. First off, with respect to reaching out to USDA, were I to believe that would have any chance of actually accomplishing something, I'd be happy to do that. Actually, come to think of it, I did reach out to them months ago with a Freedom of Information Act request. I called them, they said write to them, I wrote to them, I still don't have a response. So that's why we're acting, because USDA is not doing what they need to do. As far as interstate commerce, I'll tell you as well, if this impacts interstate commerce, so too does Chapter 828 of Florida statutes, because that regulates the welfare of animals and animal cruelty and things of that nature. So that's been on the books for years and years and years. This is no more an impact in interstate commerce than Chapter 828 of the state statute says, and that's certainly constitutional.
Diana Webb, and then Michelle Chapman.
Good evening, Diana Webb, 309 North Fisk Boulevard, Cocoa, Florida. I came here tonight to support a total ban of retail sales of mill-bred puppies and kittens. Hundreds of your constituents not only believe this is going to be effective for not only the animals here in Brevard County, but animals across the country in other states that are subjected to suffering due to the horrific conditions. Originally, I came here to speak about real statistics, the abysmal treatment of innocent animals, the countless complaints from local residents about their newly acquired family pet, that they have gone through pain and anguish and countless thousands of dollars trying to save them from a lifelong life of misery or even worse, death, all because they purchased their animal from a local business. After giving it some thought, I decided I really don't want to speak about the ban. You've already been provided by your constituents, experts, factual information. You've been shown factual, appalling pictures where animals come from, and you've been provided opinions by many voters on how important this subject is to them. Now it's time for you, the appropriate officials, to make the ethical decisions we request. Now what I'd like to talk about is you, our representatives. You were put up on the dais by the voters of Brevard County. You were put in a position to make decisions, facilitate laws to benefit our communities. But most importantly, you were put in place to do the will of the people. Hundreds of voters have written to you and called you and contacted you on social media in support of a total ban on retail sales of puppies and kittens. Not some loophole-filled agenda that's being served up here to our community. Your current ban does nothing to support the will of the people. We want a ban that will actually stop the sale of these kittens and puppies. You're sitting up there not to cast your personal opinions or dispersions against us as voters. You were put there to do the will of the people, and the people have spoken loudly and overwhelmingly on this ban. The voters have begged you, we've respectfully asked you, cajoled, pleaded, and it has gotten us nowhere. So now we come before you to mandate you to follow the wishes of the taxpayers and the voters that put you in the position that you are in, and you're paid for by us. Now is time to step up and do the decent thing. Do your job as so appointed. We have all seen what not doing the right thing has done in this county. Look at our lagoon, look at Lake Okeechobee. In conclusion, I'm not going to plead cajole. I am, however, going to obligate you to go back with this bastardized ban and revise it to reflect what the constituents and the taxpayer in this county have repeatedly come up here and told you. Please do your duty. Please do the honorable and ethical thing. Thank you.
You need to speak? Is that old? Michelle Chapman. And after Michelle, Barbara Gorin.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Chapman, and I'm a resident of Orange County, Florida. I am here because my love of animals exceeds the county I live in. I care about animals in Brevard just as much. I would like to start by thanking Commissioner Lober, Ms. Bentley, Sheriff Ivey, and his staff for all the work they've done on this ordinance. Having said that, I can no longer support this ordinance. The current language has moved too far from the original intent. I have struggled with whether a weak ordinance is better than no ordinance at all. But my own experience as the owner of a puppy mill breeder dog compels me to ask you not to pass the ordinance in its current form. The current language of the ordinance will continue to allow puppy mills to supply their puppies to pet stores, as they always have. Please understand that USDA licensed commercial breeders are puppy mills. By allowing retail stores to source from commercial licensed breeders, aka puppy mills will continue to be sold to the public through Brevard County pet stores. To suggest that there are varying degrees of violations, to me, is akin to varying degrees of child abuse. Do we wait until the parental rights are terminated, or do we step in and do something before it's too late? You need to realize that these animals are living in substandard conditions, which are approved by the USDA. They spend their lives in wire cages. In some cases, they never see the sky, they never get exercise. This is not acceptable. I cannot support a ban that does not see the issue with this. And contrary to what others have suggested, 62 communities in our state have approved similar bans. The people have spoken. The people want this. Can't Brevard step up and do the same? Please, I ask that you please reconsider the current position. Please adopt the ban as originally proposed. On behalf of all the dogs and puppy mills, I thank you very much.
Barbara Gorin. And after Barbara, Rosa Bennett.
Good evening. Barbara Gorin, Viera, Florida. I just want to say that I am not in agreement with everything on this side that everybody is saying. I think that if the rules and regulations are in place and there is a violation, fine, that needs to be taken care of. But for all puppies and kittens, I would just go as far as saying all puppies. I don't care about kittens. I should, but I don't. So my focus is on puppies because I'm a puppy person. But they need to be taken care of properly. This poor gentleman, I don't think he's had a violation. If he did, it was something minor enough to be taken care of. You don't agree with me?
I don't want to take up your time.
Okay, but I just really think that this needs to go away. Put in the regulations that we have, or if you need to tweak them, fine, but this is getting so out of hand and so monumental that it's gone beyond the pale, I think, for what is normal business to be done and the way it should be handled. Puppy mills are supposed to be outlawed. They're not. So they get recycled. The puppies that they can't get rid of, they get recycled. They go to this group. This group recycles them, and then they go to another group and they recycle. Then they go to the shelters. And then the shelters can sell them for whatever amount of money they can get out of it, saying that this is not you don't pay just $15 or $20 to get the dog. I'm sorry, this is just so monumental. I don't think it's something that we need to dig into here. We're going way out of the realm of taking care of one business, helping one business in this county. And that's just my, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a brief comment, if I may, and if you want to respond, you're welcome to. I do want to point out, one of the items that we were discussing prior to going to public comment pertaining to both animal rescue groups and animal shelters, there's language dealing with both of them that essentially say that while they're entitled to seek adoption fees to offset costs incurred in rehabilitating and caring for the animals, they're not entitled to otherwise seek to profit from the sale. So I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding in terms of...
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. No,
Not
it's okay.
according to what I was reading. And I went through a lot of things, HSU, HUS, the PETA, and different organizations, and how puppy mills, if they don't get rid of the dogs they want legally, there's another legal way of doing it. They're doing, they go through, I'm sorry,
It's okay.
didn't expect to have to do
No,
that.
I mean, you're not obligated to...
They do, there's two other organizations, and one of them, they end up selling back to the original organization, who then will give them to the shelters, sell them to the shelters for a minimum amount of money, and the shelters can then sell them for triple the
That
amount.
may be permissible at other localities, but with the way that this is drafted, that's not permissible in Brevard County, or won't when this is put in place.
Okay, I'm just saying that's what I have read happens, and that's what I
It
think
may
we're
in other
just
areas.
getting out of hand,
Yeah,
totally out of hand.
I think I've gotten a lot of emails, not just with that, but other contentions that have been spread around, where I think there's a misunderstanding in terms of a lot of the aspects of this and what it would actually prevent and wouldn't prevent. When we started this process, I had originally drafted a more restrictive ordinance, and essentially what took place whittled it down to something where now a retail pet store, were this to be adopted, could get dogs either from rescue organizations or shelters, which was in the original. They can also get them from hobby breeders, which is very broadly defined, up to 48 puppies or kittens a year. And then over and above that, they can also get them from licensed USDA facilities, provided they don't have violations within the preceding 48 months. The one gentleman who came up here originally, and even in Florida today, they noted in an opinion piece that was published that he doesn't source from breeders that have violations, when that was demonstrated objectively beyond any ability of anyone to refute. That's not the case. So essentially now, the fact that same individual is still opposing it is showing you that really what's being opposed is he wants to, or the industry wants to, essentially allow the pet stores to continue to source from USDA licensed breeders that have violations. So I don't, with respect to this, I don't see this prohibiting anyone from getting a dog from any organization, or essentially, by and large, with rare exception, any entity that's doing the right thing. There may be some peculiar, extenuating exception to it, but everything that I've heard has failed to point out what an extenuating exception might be that would preclude him, or anyone else for that matter, from buying a dog essentially anywhere they want, again, provided it's not from something that's specifically disallowed. So I think the contention that's been spread has been one that, while it's restricted to these certain areas, and people are failing to recognize that the way that it's presently drafted, and the way that it left the last time it came before the commission, it included not just hobby breeders with a very expansive definition, but also the USDA licensed commercial breeders, where, again, provided they don't have a violation or violations, they can sell it at will. They can get puppies from, or pet stores can get puppies from commercial breeders that have 1,000 puppies that they're raising. So the question is really one that goes specifically to the welfare for the animals. It's not one where we're trying to play games with impacting a legitimate business, but this is an industry that's proven over a very long period of time that it will not self-police, it will not self-regulate. And just like Sheriff Ivey said in a prior commission meeting, just because it's a regulation doesn't mean it's bad. Essentially, we have regulations on the sale of tires. You can't go and cut the sidewall of a tire, put some duct tape on it, and turn around and sell it. Essentially, everything that is a law is a regulation. Murdering someone, that's making that illegal, that's a regulation. The fact you can't kill someone, the fact that slavery is illegal, that's a regulation. We regulate or prescribe that particular conduct. So the fact that it's a regulation just means that it's a law. It doesn't mean anything more, better, worse, or otherwise. And I think that a lot of folks, maybe even some folks that are sitting here, came here with a mistaken impression, or several mistaken impressions, in terms of the actual contents of what's being proposed. Is that fair?
You're very verbose. I appreciate your ability to go on and
Thank you.
try and make us understand. Thank you.
Okay, Rosa Bennett, and after Rosa, Glenda Stevenson.
Hi, I'm Rosa Bennett, 6885 Ward Parkway, Melbourne Village. I'd like to thank the commissioners for even taking up this issue. I think that what you have done is created an ordinance that will assist Sheriff Ivey and protect the welfare of animals better than it did before. So thank you for your efforts. That being said, I also believe that there should be a ban on hobby breeders. Hobby breeders is basically just another way of saying puppy mills, in my opinion. And if we allow 48 puppies from a hobby breeder, that's way too much. One litter could be up to 12 or 13. Why not contain it to one litter? Why not restrict it much, much more than what is being restricted now? 48 is excessive. And if we are going to leave hobby breeders in this amendment, I would ask the commissioners to please limit it to a reasonable number. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, after Glenda, we have Andrea Shackles. Hi, name and address, please.
My name is Glenda Stevenson, 163 Anderson Avenue Northeast, Palm Bay. I am a lifetime resident of Brevard County. I was born here, one of the few crackers that are still around, I'm sure. I'm also the American Kennel Club delegate for Space Coast Kennel Club of Palm Bay. I'm a licensed AKC judge, and I travel all over the world showing dogs and judging dog shows. I do find exception to hobby breeders or a person as myself as being called a puppy mill. We are not. Our job as breeders is to ensure the betterment of our breed, to make sure that our dogs are free from inherited diseases. We find homes for our dogs that will keep their dogs forever. And we stand there and say that if they can't keep their dog, please just bring it back. If you don't want to talk to me, throw it over my fence so I can take care of the dog. When it comes to this ordinance, I do find two exceptions. Number one, I do not like the term that's being used in the preamble section of it, referring to the Humane Society of the United States. This is a nonprofit organization that is not a government entity, and in my opinion, they are not experts in anything that has to do with animal welfare. With that being said, I do believe that the ordinance has some benefits, but it needs to be completely overworked. There is nothing in this ordinance right now that's going to protect a hobby breeder or make sure that somebody's not going to be banging on our door because I advertise my dog on Craigslist. The minute that I take money from somebody, that's a retail sale. So we need to stop and think about what we're doing. This ordinance needs to go away and let everything go back to the way it was and it be being regulated by the ordinances that are already on the books. If you have any questions, please contact me because apparently I have a whole field of people with the kennel clubs that would be love to answer your questions. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lober.
Ma'am, just a couple comments on what you'd said, and I think this is not just in this recent revision, but even in the prior revision, perhaps a couple prior revisions has always been the case. The regulations pertaining to hobby breeders only apply to those hobby breeders who sell to retail stores. So in terms of protecting them, there is no regulation whatsoever with respect to hobby breeders that don't sell to retail stores. And my understanding is the vast majority, if not all, of the kennel clubs have in their code of ethics or in their code that's applicable to members prohibitions on their members selling to retail stores in the first place. So I still have yet to hear from anyone from the AKC or otherwise what the specific concern is insofar as there being some potential harm to them.
Commissioner Pritchett?
And ma'am, I just wanted to say, we wrote in here specifically the retail sale that hobby breeders were excluded, so on purpose, it wouldn't touch the breeders such as yourself. So I think you're going to find there's really nothing that's going to change what you're already doing unless you decide to sell to a pet store. And that's the only time a little bit of a difference would come in, just making sure that you are a hobby breeder, but you're pretty protected with this.
Okay, Andrea Shackles, and then Greg Shackles.
Andrea Shackles, 2273 Lucille Lane, Melbourne, Florida. I was here, not the last meeting, the meeting before, to talk about my little girl Savannah, who I purchased from Puppies Plus in the mall in December of 2010. She is a puppy mill dog. She does nothing but go in circles. I brought her to the vet, Aloha Pets, and they told me all I could do would be to medicate her, and she would sleep 18 to 20 hours a day. And I therefore said, no medication. So we deal with her going in circles. I have no regrets getting her. However, this is no life for a dog, but this is all she knows. She's the most lovable, lickable dog ever. You want certain breeds? I love golden retrievers. I've had them all my life. Go to a reputable golden retriever breeder. I've gotten a golden retriever off of Craigslist that I rescued. I've also gotten a golden retriever from a reputable breeder in New York. I investigated, I inspected it. It was a perfect breeder. I have nothing wrong, I have nothing bad to say about wanting certain breeds. However, there are so many breeds out there that in the shelters, Hillsborough County 2 weeks ago, they're overloaded with dogs. I don't know why Hillsborough County is over here in Brevard County protesting what we're trying to do. When they themselves have shelters that are overloaded, they were giving away dogs, no adoption fees. Why don't they try and promote those dogs to homes and try to rescue them instead of trying to stop when they don't even vote in our county? They have no rights in this county. I don't understand. As far as Puppies Plus in the mall, I've been there before. After I've gotten Savannah, I've inspected, I've walked around as a potential buyer. I would never send anybody there. The dog crates, it's filthy. The dogs are in very small crates. They have no room. I was never told where exactly my Savannah came from. They couldn't give me papers. All they told me was, she's AKC, which I have papers showing that, but it doesn't say where she came from. So this proposal you're doing, I totally am against it. It doesn't protect the dogs. Hobby breeders, I think, is a joke of a name. They're only in it for the money because they wouldn't sell it, a puppy, for money. Like I said, I love Goldens. If I had a Golden that I made it, I wouldn't charge for them. I would give them to somebody who absolutely adores them, and I would make sure that the home is clean, safe, and okay for the puppy.
Thank you. Greg Shackles, and after Greg, we have Thad Reap.
Good evening, Commissioners, County Manager, County Attorney. I'm just amazed that we're here again and you guys still can't.
Did you give your name and address?
Oh, Greg Shackles, 2273 Lucille Lane, Melbourne, Florida.
Thank you.
I'm just amazed I'm here again. At least this time it's not my anniversary. But you're still not in agreement. I can see that Commissioner Lober's still not comfortable with this. Commissioner Nardi, you know, I voted for you. I know where you sit on this. It's just not working. We talk about the FDA. Let me just show you something. Our current administration, here's a really bad report. This place would close down. This is who the person is or who the place is. You can't see it. You said that you put in a request. I would never find out this information. Here's another report from the FDA, same thing. Everything is redacted, so I don't know how you're going to do research on a place that all the information that's available is redacted. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm against this ban totally. I think, I just want to get a show of hands. How many people are against this one right here? I want a show of hands. See, these are voters. Okay, we voted you people in. Okay, this is ridiculous. The people from Hillsborough, here's your news article. You're overflowing in Hillsborough. Go back home, okay? Yeah, I'm getting a little bit aggravated. As far as Puppies Plus, not accredited with the BBB. We're talking about Yelp. Let me just get all my information here. Here, Yelp, 2 out of 5. Excellent report. Google, 2.9 out of 5. Excellent report. Out of 5. It fits exactly with the puppy that we got from your same place. I just want to read something else. Bear with me. This is an email most recently between the Humane Society, Michelle Lazaro, and Commissioner Lober. And I'm just going to read one part from Commissioner Lober. The short answer to this is that I'm confident, even in its present form, it will put a significant hurdle in Jacobson's ability to continue sourcing the matter in which he has. Basically, we're writing a law to push and expect him to fail where he's already failed, and you have proven it. It's a dirty business. What are we protecting? So in the short of it, we're against it. I'm against it. These people are against it, and I think it's time to go back and either rewrite or don't do it at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sir, quick question. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. Did you say you purchased your puppy from
Puppies Plus.
Puppies Plus?
My wife just told you also.
Super. You mentioned that the Yelp reviews were what?
I think Yelp was 2-point-something out of 5.
And what was the Google one?
2.9.
Why did you buy a puppy from a place that had such
This is
low...
recent, okay? I'm not talking about 8 years ago we got that puppy.
Google was around 8 years ago.
Okay, I can't tell you what it was then. I'm telling you, we're talking about an ordinance going in now in about one pet shop.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's your intent for me as a commissioner to vote against the ordinance that's in front of me. Is that correct?
As it is in place right now, correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thad Reap. And after Thad, Daniel Williman.
Thad Reap, 728 John Carroll Lane, West Melbourne. I'm not here in favor of puppy mills. I'm not here to try and put down a business. I'm more worried about the overreach that's taking place. It says in the summary explanation, the board finds prohibiting the retail sale of dogs and cats in stores throughout the county to promote community awareness of the plight of animals and puppy mills. If that's the goal, all you have to do is turn on the television. There are 15 ads a day showing an animal suffering. So I don't think that you're going to get there by just restricting. The other part of it I'm looking at here is where you're calling it 48 dogs. Makes you 49, now you're no longer a hobby breeder. The size of the dog determines the size of the litter. If you have Great Danes and you have 3 litters, you can bust that. You can. So now, what did they do with the extra dog? I think you have problems with the wording that you have in this program. I think something's happening here where you guys should actually be looking at trying to get regulations on the puppy mills and not try and dictate where we pick our family members. I have family members that are pets. I don't want somebody to tell me it has to come from a rescue. I don't want somebody to tell me that it's going to be better if it comes from a rescue because I don't know that animal's history either. You guys are trying to sidestep the thing where people, it is buyer beware. They should do their research. They should get it from a reputable breeder. But if you're going to sit there and determine that it can only be sold through a retail store out of a rescue, then you're going to run into other problems like small dogs You run out of them. All you got is the pits mixes in the animal shelters, and you live in an HOA where there's a 20-pound restriction. I think you need to let people choose their own pets. I think you let them do their own due diligence and not regulate who can get what where. I also am not, again, in favor of anything cruel to animals. I just think that this is a little too far-reaching, and you guys need to work on it some more.
Commissioner Lober?
Couple questions. First, before I get into anything, were you here when I was speaking a few minutes ago to Ms. Gorin?
I was here.
You mentioned in what you just said that essentially that's what's being proposed, or at least you implied it, that pet stores could only sell from rescues.
It says in your wording here that it has to be through rescues, was part of the original. I don't know how many revisions you've got, but the one I was reading.
When you were here during that conversation, do you recall my having mentioned that you can source from rescues?
You can.
Excuse me, sir, one moment. I promise I'll give you the opportunity to respond. I promise you that. From rescues, from shelters, from hobby breeders, which are very broadly defined, as you've even mentioned, I believe, and then also from USDA licensed breeders with no violations. I think that's a far cry from only sourcing from rescue. wouldn't you agree?
You promote it here, that it should be, that the pet shops locally should be, I'll have to go back.
Is that a yes?
We changed it, sir.
It's been totally out of there? Okay. Well, then I just go back to that one other thing is I can't figure out what to do with the 49th puppy.
Let me ask you another question then. In terms of regulating the puppy mills, if you can show me a way that we sitting here can regulate puppy mills out of state and have that be enforceable, I'm happy to go scrap the whole thing right now. Tell me how to do it.
I don't have that answer for you.
No one does.
I don't think that what you're doing gives us that answer either. I think you're just restricting the citizenry here. It does not close down that puppy mill.
In what way do you believe that it restricts the citizens here?
Because now you're telling us what we can get where.
Well, where would you prefer to get them? If this didn't exist, would you rather get them from organizations that have numerous welfare violations?
I'm not seeking that.
Well,
I'm
that's
just
what you're
saying, no, I'm not. I'm saying that you are determining who can do business, who can do commerce.
Okay, you guys are probably not going to agree, and this isn't productive,
We'll
so we're
agree
going
to
to move
disagree,
on.
sir.
Okay, Daniel Williman, and after Daniel, Teresa Clifton.
Good evening, Commission, Chairwoman Nisnardi, Mr. Lober. Thank you for this introduction of the ordinance. In the original, I noticed there were some changes. One of them, no pun intended, it feels like this is losing its teeth with the USDA inclusion. I have learned through the course of the meeting tonight that there is a stipulation that there be no violations. I am very happy about that because I know I came up here last time, and I'd love to show you more cute pictures and talk about Buford and his problems, but this is about, there were 17 pages of USD violations before this breeder where Mr. Jacobson got Buford, had her license pulled. 17 pages, that's unacceptable. No dog should have to go through that, having multiple violations over and over and over again before the license is pulled. So I'm glad you initially pushed to keep that stipulation in there. I do think there needs to be some language requiring due diligence, requiring the pet store owners to inspect, I know it's unfeasible to fly out to the site or whatever, but I do have a suggestion. We live in the 21st century now, and everybody has a smartphone, everybody has Facebook, well, most people do. Facebook Messenger supports live video. How hard would it be to get on the phone with the breeder and say, hey, can you go on Facebook Messenger live and just show me around? There does need to be some due diligence in this. There needs to be a requirement that kind of thing takes place. I mean, we're talking about living beings with beating hearts here. We're not ordering parts from a catalog. So I think I've pretty much addressed everything. How many violations, how many pages of violations do we have to see before somebody gets a license pulled? I am in support of this at the way it's written right now, because it seems that if there is a violation, then they won't be able to source their puppies from that breeder, which is good here in Brevard because, I don't think anybody else needs to go through what I went through, and I don't think any other dog here in Brevard should go through what Buford went through. Thank you. If you have any other questions.
Okay.
Just
Keep it short.
I promise. Shorter than before. Ms. Bentley, with respect to the Facebook Live or equivalent, whether it be Skype or FaceTime or something along those lines, is that something that we could potentially do? I've not considered that in the past. And I think as far as tonight's ordinance, it's more important to me to get it passed, knowing that we're going to revisit it if it's substantially there. But I don't have a problem looking at whether or not that's something that we're able to do. I just don't know offhand.
I think that may need to come back at a later date. If you do that now, your ordinance as presented previously did not contain that requirement, and that would be a new requirement.
Yeah. Yeah, my thought is kind of buy while the offer's on the table and come back.
I understand that you're going to revisit this, so if that could be included in a future discussion of
I promise I'll look into it, and if it's something that's possible, we'll certainly have the discussion up here.
Okay.
If it's for some reason either unenforceable or otherwise problematic, we won't. But if there's some way to implement that, I'll certainly visit that and see what the commission's general kind of feel for it is. If it's something we can put in place, I don't mind it. I know that the discussions we had earlier did involve some talk about visiting breeders, but as you correctly noted,
I brought that
the
up last
out-of-state
time.
ones, it's tough. So I promise you I'll look at it, and if it's something we can do, I'll revisit it here.
Thank you for at least taking a look at that. I brought that up last time with the visiting. I didn't think of Facebook Live at the time. I knew it was unfeasible to require somebody to actually fly out and go on site.
Right.
But I mean, 21st century, so.
I'll look at it, I promise you that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa Clifton, and after Teresa, Alexandria Julian.
Hey, y'all. Teresa Clifton, 4990 Scarlett Avenue, Canaveral Groves. I'm the executive director of the Brevard Humane Society, and whereas I was somewhat not happy with how things took place this evening as well, we have to start somewhere, and you have to have a foundation somehow, and you have to compromise. Nobody's going to be happy with everything, but from what I'm hearing, it's making me happy that we will have something, because the pet retail business is a dirty one for most, to say it bluntly, and you have to start somewhere in a community that if you only have one that's in operation right now, what happens when you get 2, 4, 8, 10? Unfortunately, it does happen. Most people don't open an animal shelter to make money. The Humane Society was started in 1952, and we struggle on an annual, monthly, whatever basis. The money we get from the adoption fees does not even cover the cost of how we take care of them. They are vetted, they're spayed or neutered, they are well taken care of. We are regulated in a number of ways. I don't have time to go into it right now, but anyone is welcome to come into our facility and walk through any of our areas at any time that we are open. We are an open book, and we will take animals in as best we can to help out. And I'm very proud to be part of this community. I'm 5 generations Brevard County resident, and you guys make me happy that you're spending all of this time going over this and being very careful about doing it. The Humane Society is supportive of this because it is a foundation. It is something to get it started. And to be honest with you, since y'all started talking about this months ago, my adoption rates are up. I'm finding homes for homeless animals. So yes, thank you very much. Because you are making awareness in our community, and that makes me very proud to be part of this community. And I think that the sooner people understand that animal shelters are not full of just pits and pit mixes, we get some of the most beautiful animals. People just need to come and see us, and to any animal shelter to adopt. And if there is something wrong with an animal that we adopt out, there doesn't have to be a lemon law because they're animals. We take care of them. We will take them back, and we will take care of them as best that we can, as would any animal shelter. I can't speak for all of them in this community, but I do know them, and the sheriff has been a wonderful example of that, as has SPCA. So I do thank you for your time, and I hope that this does pass because it is a start in the right direction. Thank you.
Alexandria Julian, and then Natalia Sanabria.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Alexandria Julian. I'm at 2124 West Brandon Boulevard. So just to touch on a few things, it was just discussed earlier that the business owner could be potentially arrested over the ordinance that was being proposed. Not going to get into for what. But I just had two questions to follow up with that. One is, if this occurred, or one statement, if this occurred, then the business owner's name would be dragged through the mud, and at that point, you can't unblow that whistle, so I feel like we should try to prevent from that as much as possible. And then two, who would be paying the legal fees afterward? That's not my main topic here. I'm going to talk about the USDA. So violations fall under two categories. We have direct and indirect. I don't know if I've spoken on this at all, but to give you an example, a direct violation is something that can harm the dog's quality of life versus an indirect is something that maybe you're missing a collar, a trash can was left open, a food lid was open, something like that. So it doesn't harm the dog's quality of life or harm the animal at all. The definitions are in the USDA handbook, so there is a way to identify which is which. A potential compromise to what you guys were saying would be maybe no direct violations in the last 2 years. There's something in the Hillsborough County ordinance that goes over no more than 4 indirect in a 24-month period, and then no directs at all. So what we were talking about as far as the animal welfare, nothing that harms that. 4 years, I would think would be insinuating that a breeder cannot improve if they had a violation 4 years ago and then they're back on track, or if a breeder sold their kennel and the new breeder got inspected and this breeder had a violation, they wouldn't be able to, that breeder may be better than the last or whatever. So I think 2 years is a better number. Also, what about new breeders? If a new breeder comes into business, does that mean they have to wait 4 years before they can source their animal to a pet store? Maybe something that would address that. I don't think there would be any issue with saying that there can't be any type of violations in the last 2 years. I don't think that's too stringent or anything like that. And a quick question, since we are talking about coming back to this 6 months from now, if there's going to be a meeting, is it possible to have representatives from all parts of the industry? I'm talking like rescues, shelters, pet store owners, maybe the USDA, something, AKC, hobby breeders. Is there a potential for that in that meeting? That's it.
Thanks. Did you have a question?
Just real briefly, I do want to address one of the points that you brought up, just quite directly. As far as new breeders, they can sell instantaneously. Would you agree, Ms. Bentley?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could put something in there, but it's just adding language for the sake of adding language. I mean, there's essentially, if they haven't been in existence, they wouldn't have any violations for the preceding 4 years. As to your other question, though, it's going to depend on the nature of the meeting. The concern is if it involves everyone here sitting down at the same time, we'd have to notice it, and you would certainly be entitled to come, as would anyone else, with public comment. That said, it just depends on what the will of the commission is. I'm happy to do that if the commission wants to do that.
I was referring to the meeting that you guys were talking about with the sheriff, and then possibly like the staff, and are you guys talking about what violations were what?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, if there's a public comment time, I'll do that. But.
My thought with it was to have something basically just back and forth, whether it's email or phone calls, or if he happens to be.
Not like
my
a
building
traditional
has.
meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
my building, half of my building is the sheriff's office where I'm at. So if he happens to be in the precinct anyway, he may walk across the hall or I may walk across the hall. So I didn't really envision something very formal. My thought, though, is if you email me or email him, there's no reason I can't forward to him or vice versa. The only folks I can't communicate with outside of a notice meeting are sitting up here.
Right.
So, my thought is, the same way that I'm going to communicate with him, I would just encourage you to do the same. And if someone wants to email him, hopefully he's not going to kill me for saying it, but it's wayne.ivy@bcso.us. I won't give you his home number, but
Fair, okay. Well,
Commissioner
thank you so much.
Pritchett?
Callie, I did ask the sheriff to get with you, so maybe you can sit with him, because I've learned a lot from you, like the whole signage about being on the pets container came from you guys, because you have a great love of pets. So I think Sheriff Ivy would sit with you, and you guys could go through some of that, and we'll try to get the best definition here as far as, you know, the outline of those violations. You've been doing this for a while, so you, like you
Whole
just
life.
said, you had some ideas up there that I didn't even think of that might be pertinent to this.
Okay,
So
perfect.
that would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks. Natalie? And after Natalie, Richard Garcia? Hi, name and address, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Natalia Santabria, and I reside in Hillsborough County. Hello, County Commissioners. My name is Natalia Santabria. Myself, along with the campaigners with My Puppy, My Choice, provided you with a lot of information over the last few months, and we are happy to see an ordinance on the table that would further regulate the retail sale of pets rather than shut down local businesses. We believe this is a great dialogue for any county to have. It is refreshing to see that this commission acknowledges that the issue is not black and white. In passing a regulation-based ordinance, you are taking a stand against puppy mills while not eliminating business owners' right to operate or preventing the consumer's right to choose. Thank you for setting apart reputable breeders from the immoral and acknowledging that pet stores can operate a successful business without the use of puppy mills. Thank you for acknowledging that while puppy mills do exist, that there are reputable commercial and hobby breeders out there. Everyone who has stood in front of you over these past few months is doing what they believe is right, and although not everyone will be happy with this regulation-based ordinance, this is a huge compromise on everyone's part. After the ordinance passed in Hillsborough County, so many great things had followed. We built a stronger relationship with our county shelter. Through the process, we have each found a new respect for each other's position in this very complex industry. Now we all work together to make sure all the animals are very well taken care of. This ordinance also gave our breeders more incentive to go above and beyond, all while limiting the bad actors in a more accelerated rate. Alienating pet stores and labeling them as bad will not accomplish anything. I am glad to see that this commission recognizes this. There are so many issues that have been brought to light during these meetings. Instead of all of us fighting against each other, we should all be working together to come up with a better solution. Like we've said before, this issue is not black and white. A regulation-based model is a necessary step in the right direction. And that is it.
Thank you.
Just real briefly.
Yes.
Okay.
Just real, I'm trying to understand, so are you happy with the ordinance as it's drafted now?
I mean, it is better than nothing. Now, if there could be a couple tweaks, like she had said before, like the indirect and the direct violations, you know, make it a little bit easier so that way it's not you're shutting down a store for something, like she said, leaving a lid open.
Sure.
That's not harming a puppy. But all in all, I mean, something is better than nothing in the end of this.
I would just encourage you, as I suggested to her, if you get in touch with the sheriff or with me or with both of us, there's no reason you can't write to one and CC the other. Pick whichever you want in the two and whichever you want in the CC field. And I can promise you it'll be discussed.
Yeah, of course. Or even if we come out here and speak to you, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to meet with essentially anyone.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Richard Garcia, and then John LaSalle. Richard Garcia? Oh, I think he left. John? If someone sees Richard before we're done, he can come up.
John LaSalle Vieira. My attempt to free association, just making notes as it went along. It should have been a workshop, obviously. All the hours we spent, all the comments, you have 3 minutes, you know, and then you get asked a question, and you think something when you sit down. A workshop would have been so much more efficient, but that's water under the bridge. I've got to say, back my initial view of this whole thing is we got a problem with abused animals. They call them puppy mills. I call them bad breeders. And they're in Ohio. The sheriff can't go to Ohio. So what do? We'll close down a long-time 22-year business, and we'll stop anybody else from coming in later. So if you don't like this guy and you think he's been messed up and you get rid of him, fine. let's not let anybody else come in. It's not a solution to the problem. The problem is out of state. The problem is abused animals. We've got the USDA, but badmouth all along, they're incompetent and all that. We have contacted them, and we have gotten, you can get 2 years of violations redacted because we have crazy people. If they don't redact it, they'll go harass and hurt people who have had violations. It's another issue. It's puppy mill, out of state, local sales in state. The two different animals. I don't think anything's going to be accomplished by it. As I read it, and we're making the changes, if you have a dog that has a litter, and you keep the litter, as long as it's not more than 4, because the county has a 4 limit, no problem. But if you sell, trade, barter, give away, that's the words, trade, give away, you're subject now to inspection as a dog breeder. And that means the sheriff can knock on your door, and you talked about violations and all that, but having puppies shouldn't be making you subject to inspection by law enforcement. And that's the way you've got it written. Unless you change it, anybody who has a litter and you sell, trade, or give it away, you're going to be inspected. And that's the biggies that I got from people coming up and saying USDA can't do the job. It's easy to badmouth inspectors, federal inspectors, and they're good and bad. That's the way it is. You have some good and bad. And some of these violations, this dog had long nails, this dog, this, and well, here we go. Thanks.
John, can you hang tight for a second?
Sure I can.
And again, I have nothing but respect for you. I appreciate it.
Well, we supported you, Bob.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming up here. But again, I think just to go back to what's been discussed to a degree previously, you do have some points that certainly aren't affected by changes, but one point I do want to clarify, because it is not in the way that it's written something that still ought to be a concern as far as subjecting folks to inspection based on selling one dog. And I'll also ask Ms. Bentley after I'm finished to confirm that her understanding is the same. We'd previously had in the language of the proposed ordinance, nothing in this section, this is the hobby breeder section, nothing in this section is intended to create new inspection requirements insofar as hobby breeders are concerned. We're also adding on top of that, which I think would have covered it, but in an absolute abundance of caution, with respect to the inspections by BCSO, it applies only, and we're adding to those who sell to pet stores to ensure to ensure that we're talking about hobby breeders selling only to retail. So folks that want to go have a litter and sell a puppy or 2 or 5 can do that. They're not going to get a knock on their door by the sheriff with some new inspection requirement created by virtue of this. Because I agree, that would not be reasonable. That was not something I think that was ever intended. I think it was addressed largely before, but it's certainly at this point, it's abundantly clear that there would not be that additional restriction. But your other points, certainly we have to agree to disagree. But as to that, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, good. But including there was giveaway, sell, barter, and give away. I said, what are you thinking? What do you mean? If you give an animal away, you're subject to inspection? But you say that's out of there now.
No, I can assure you, and I think you know me well enough that if I tell you something, you can bank on it. Just as I trust you, I'd hope you trust me to that degree. But it's not in there.
Okay.
Okay, so we're done with cards.
I'm the last one.
You were the last one. Save the best for last. Okay.
This has been a fun process. All right, so I think maybe, and if you have a better idea or a different idea, please let me know, and I'm happy to work with you. Maybe the best bet is just to go through to be absolutely certain that we're addressing each of the items that we intend to ensure are voted upon.
Commissioner Tabaya, do you have something you want to say first? Because he says little, so let's let him speak.
Thanks. There's been some substantive change here, and my question would be the cost associated with the changes. Before I vote on this, I certainly want to be cognizant. Obviously, the sheriff will have more that he will need to inspect if we create more violations. I assume this will be turned over to the state attorney. This will require the state attorney then to devote more manpower to this. So I understand that the intent here is for the wellness of puppies. My question is, what will be the cost with this?
Go ahead.
The short answer is it's impossible to determine until we see whether folks are compliant. I can tell you with there being one store as of present, I don't imagine the cost is going to be terribly great. That coupled with, as we discussed previously, law enforcement discretion and prosecutorial discretion, again, it's impossible to put a solid, irrefutable number on something that involves unknown variables, but I do not imagine this is going to be terribly costly by any means. What's more, when cases are resolved at the state attorney's office, typically is a resolution whether the case is, they have what's called a conditional null pros, which essentially means that in exchange for completing certain conditions, the case is dropped. That's one option that may well end up being availed with respect to this ordinance on one or more occasions. Basically, one of the frequent conditions for a conditional null pros is payment of cost of investigation and cost of prosecution. So generally speaking, one way or the other, the cost is incurred by the defendant in that.
And just to follow up, Madam Chair, you mentioned prosecutorial discretion as a, as a defense attorney, can you explain?
Sure.
Is prosecutorial, from your perspective, a discretion a good or a bad thing?
It has the potential to be either.
From your perspective as a practicing attorney.
Sure.
Is
it has
prosecutorial discretion a good or a bad
It has the potential to be either. I'll give you an example. I had a woman that I represented probably the better part of 6 or 7 years ago who was arrested for either, I think it was retail petty theft. Essentially what she did was she took some items from a big box store that was chock full of security cameras, probably the dumbest possible place to take items, and she exchanged them and then turned around and tried to buy food with the money because she had a metastatic cancer. I'm almost certain she's long since died. That's where you'd want to see prosecutorial discretion, where the person's trying to get food because they have to choose between food and chemo drugs or anti-nausea drugs. That's where something like that comes in. Does it always happen the way that I want it to? No, but does it happen to at least a degree? Of course. So I'm not saying that you can count on that absolutely every single time, but I think that generally speaking, they do try to do the right thing. There are some instances in which, again, as a defense attorney with the bias that entails, I don't always agree with the decisions that they make, but this has to go through separate rungs. It's got to go through law enforcement discretion and then prosecutorial discretion. So it does weed out some of the really frivolous stuff. But again, if we're revisiting this in 6 months, it may all be a moot argument at this point.
So can you help explain, as a defense attorney, you're working within statutes that you have no control over. As a county commissioner, you're writing the statutes. So,
well, the ordinance in this case, but sure, it's analogous.
How in the world, where you have control, where you say it could go sideways, and you have the ability to prevent that from happening by writing a much more clear ordinance that doesn't have or doesn't leave prosecutorial discretion? Why would you, when we have the ability to create an ordinance that defines it much more tightly, why would we leave that open?
Well, I think there's kind of a faulty premise in the question in the sense that I would prefer to have any and all violations be made unlawful to give them the widest array of enforcement capability. Now, that said, there's not an appetite for that up here on the commission, so based upon that lack of appetite, we've had to rein that in to a degree. So that's essentially why I'm at where I'm at right now.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe we just kind of start at page 1 and go through?
Yes, however, I think we have the inevitable electronic version discrepancies. In your Novus agenda, there is a clean version.
Okay.
And you also have the handout from Commissioner Pritchett. I think there are 2 items in Commissioner Pritchett's item that are not in Novus that probably should have been in Novus. So if I could go ahead and identify those before you get started.
I just want to make sure that, for our sake, for your sake, and for the clerk's sake, and the public's sake, we all understand what we're voting on.
Right. So the clean version in Novus, where there should be an addition, is on page 6 in Hobby Breeder at the end. It should say, nothing in this section is intended to create new inspection requirements insofar as hobby breeders are concerned.
Perfect.
Okay, the next one.
Everyone's happy with that?
The next one is on page 9. I believe it is. Oh, I'm sorry, it's page 8 of the Novus version. It is C sub 3 at the bottom, it talks about posting. It says, in the Pritchett version, the posting requirements apply regardless of the place of origin, period. I believe that was supposed to be in the Novus version originally, and it is not.
Okay, I'm happy including that as well. That makes sense. And those were the only two that you were aware of?
Those
that
were the
differed?
only two discrepancies I could find.
Okay, so if it works for you, Commissioner Pritchett, let's go with the Novus version with those two additions and then make the modifications based upon that particular version, just so we're all on the same page.
This is the one she just said should be the correct one.
Is that, well, my thought is if those are the only two changes she's identified, let's take the Novus.
But she just said in the Novus, this should have been the Novus. I printed this off of our agenda.
Are we absolutely certain there are no other changes?
I have what was printed out in Novus.
This is our published agenda that was given to the public. That's where print
I
mine
see what you
from.
mean. That should be the Novus one then, should it not?
It's not matching my copy.
It's not, but this is what was printed out of the agenda online. I go to the online agenda, and I print out mine that way. I don't use Novus.
Well, sometimes, yeah, sometimes the Novus is different from, we had that issue with just the agenda summary, the first couple of pages.
Well, your
when Frank and I
version
were
does
doing
contain
agenda.
both of the segments that we're trying to insert, so we
Right.
could
This is
go
what was
and
given
use
to the
your
public.
version if you want.
Okay.
The clerk does have a copy of that. That's the one that says Rita's version in green.
This was
Okay.
the one given to the public, because they don't have Novus.
Okay, because I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the same one, because what I'm looking at on Novus, when I go onto the online agenda and I go to H sub 2, where is it here? H2, there are 3 attachments, the first 2 of which are the pertinent ones. One reads D2 ordinance modification 3-25-19 strike through, and the other is D2 ordinance modification clean. I'm just wondering if,
Commissioner Lober, I think it might be faster to do this, because you just agreed to what she said,
Okay.
and it's already in here.
those are the only 2 changes?
They are.
Okay, based on that representation, that's fine. Let's go ahead and do it.
Okay. And so I just printed it out. What I did, I hand-wrote it for you guys in green,
Okay.
so.
So let's, if it's okay with you, and I'll start with them here. On the top of page 2, I would prefer to keep that whereas. I think we've already visited that and voted on that with a prior resolution. On the top of 3, prior to the first bold whereas,
That was out of the information you put in there. It just said the USA also said the drop was due to revamped enforcement. I think just gives a little balance to our resolution.
okay, are the clerks on board with that? Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that we're
So
all
at
looking at this
the end
right.
of that, whereas you would add "and revamped enforcement"?
USDA also said drop was due to revamped enforcement. I think I gave you a copy.
Do we need a comma or semicolon after that?
You don't have a green revised copy?
I do, I
Okay.
do.
Okay.
And then if there's a comma or a semicolon that's needed, is that okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm terrible at grammar, so.
All right, and then I guess looking at 5, we said we're going to leave the first 2 that were highlighted pink.
Yes, sir.
We're going to leave them alone, but then we're going to omit the definition of breeder altogether, just strike that whole paragraph.
Yes.
Okay, then looking at 6, where it says the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, that sentence, hyphen, shall be entitled to conduct inspection or inspections of hobby breeders, we're adding who sell to pet stores,
Yes.
period.
To ensure they're hobby breeders.
Do we need to add to ensure they're hobby
Well,
breeders?
AKA was very, the American Kennel Association was very happy with that sentence. They were very happy with that
Okay,
sentence.
that's fine.
Okay.
Do you want to put to ensure they're a hobby breeder in parens?
However you want to do it.
Yeah, let's put that part in parens.
Okay.
And then moving on, we already have the language where it reads, nothing in the section is intended to create new inspection requirements, and it goes on. That's fine to
Yes,
leave
sir.
in.
Yes.
Following page 7, retail sale means a sale.
I think if we strike out the regardless of exchange of consideration, I think that would help Mr. Ms. Lascelles with saying, what if they just give it away or barter? I think you just keep it as a sell then.
Ms. Bentley, what do you think?
It's got a fragment of a sentence there. I mean, if you just want to say means a sale, regardless of time or location.
So
Retail
retail-
sell means a sell for the animal. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about just period means they sell?
Well, let's leave, I'm just thinking, let's take out the part you don't want and leave the rest. Retail sale means a sale of an animal regardless of time or location.
Yeah.
Let's just read it exactly that way.
That's perfect.
And
And then my concern is, includes but is not limited to, what else there might be. Is there anything else that you're worried about might fall under that, Ms. Bentley? If there's not, I'm fine striking it. I'm cautious when I
I'm
strike
always
things.
cautious and use, but it's not limited to, including but not limited to, because I never know what you might omit.
Yeah, can we
That's
leave
why-
that just in abundance of caution, and if there's...
Giving away? Okay, yes, can we strike out where it says giving away at Commissioner Smith's?
Where's that?
Sell, adoption, home exchange for compensation, and then
that's
we
fine.
get rid of giving away.
Yeah, I'm happy to strike that. Okay, so let's strike giving away, but let's leave in but is not
Okay.
limited to, if that's okay.
Yes, sir?
And then with the USDA licensed breeder, I know we've kind of gone back and forth with that. I'm okay using either the sheriff's newly proposed language or the original language,
Okay.
and then revisiting it.
We can keep the original, but I would like to revisit it in
Okay.
6 months and go ahead and define the levels of violations and how we're doing
Okay.
that.
Do you want me just to kind of pick maybe an evening meeting, roughly 6 months out, and just set it, or?
Sure, we can do that, or sheriff can get with our staff, and they can
Okay.
kind of get something.
I'll see what he wants to do.
They're
and
going
I'm
to kind
happy
of know
either
what we're
way.
looking for now, degrees of violation, so that we're trying to cover it, but
Okay. And then moving on to 8, you wanted to strike,
we agreed that one wasn't necessary, correct?
everything in that, the latter portion of 2 at the very top, starting with furthermore. So furthermore, the board finds going on through cost to the public of sheltering and euthanizing animals, just strike all that altogether.
Yes. And then you're putting in the word directly after obtained in C1.
C1. Okay, so between the words on the second line under little c sub 1, counting unless the dog or cat was, and then we're inserting the word directly obtained from an animal shelter, and then it goes on and lists other permissible entities. So then moving on to 9, you wanted to strike the last sentence in italics under little e.
Yeah.
So an itemized fee statement will be provided. We'll just strike that altogether.
Yeah, I think so.
And then we'll leave in F, little f.
Yes.
And then for little g, sub 1, we're striking any pet store, which are the first 3 words, and inserting the word all in its place.
Yes.
10's unchanged, and 11 is unchanged, and God willing, we're there. So I'd move to approve with those changes as noted, presuming the clerk is on board with all of them as well. I know we've given you guys a lot of work. Thank you.
Okay, and second, I do want to make one comment if I can, Madam Chair.
ahead.
I really didn't want to pass an ordinance on this because I'm trying to protect businesses. But hearing the sheriff and Commissioner Lober's heart and some thoughts they had of protecting animals got my attention. I still struggle with it, and after hearing all y'all talk, it made me struggle more because the side that wanted something, they don't want this, and then the side who didn't want something, they still don't want it. So Commissioner Lober, I think I'm just kind of trusting you on this, that we're doing something here and I think it is doing some good. I think we got some good things in there. But I wanted to say that, and the goal on this was never to shut down a pet store. And whether you guys are mad at somebody or not, you know, there's going to be people that love them just as much. As much of you guys that said want the whole thing banned, I had just as many people saying don't do any of this. So as far as you thinking that we're not representing the public, we are. And we're doing our best to trying to do the best thing we can for everybody and cause no harm. And that's our duty up here. And so as we've been working through this and trying to get something that's fair and something that'll help the animals, this is not going to wipe out puppy mills because there's still bad people that do bad things. And I've heard people say, you know, the USDA are doing it, and I've heard people tell me that's the rescue people doing it. I don't know, but this is the best we can do right now to do this. I don't think we should have drunk drivers on the road, but I'm not going to make it so none of you guys can drive at night. It certainly would take care of the problem. So you can't do the whole thing, but at least we can do something maybe that's going to help with it. Yeah, it's just what we can do. And this might not be everything, but it's a little wrench in it, and it's fair. So I just wanted to make those mentions. And, everybody's got emotional opinions on it. I don't know if I believe everything that everybody's been saying because they're so emotional, but I listened. And I try to find facts on things. And I think that's what this commission does up here. And I'm very proud of this commission for doing that and trying to find a way that they can bring something forward that's going to make a good impact on our community.
I had one little bit.
Sure.
No, I just kind of dovetailing from where you left off there. I think it's kind of interesting as well as someone that's served as a mediator. I would say, generally speaking, the most successful mediations are the ones where neither side leaves really thrilled. But it's probably, those are probably the closest where they generally end up as being fair. Where, both of them, they didn't get 100% of what they wanted, but in life, I think there's oftentimes a use for a dimmer switch. It's not all or nothing. So I think this is something where, as Ms. Clifton mentioned, this is definitely a step in the right direction. And my question in terms of determining whether or not I'd be inclined to kill my own ordinance, so to speak, or salvage something out of it was, is it going to leave us better off than we were when we began? And I think the answer with this is yes. Is it doing everything that I set out to do in the beginning? No. But is this a step in that direction? Yes. I think it gets us closer to that. So, for that reason, I'm certainly happy with it.
And I'll keep mine short. I think I've expressed my opinion before, and it is a tough subject, but I think what differs, as far as business regulation, what differs this from all other types of businesses is that we are dealing with living things. We are dealing with things that we purchase or that we adopt or that we expect to give us comfort and to make parts of our family. And you won't please everybody. I get emails, you're rotten, you're this, you're doing this, and you're going to put this one guy out of business. And then I get emails saying, why aren't you doing more? And so I get what Commissioner Pritchett said, and I think that there is a happy medium. I think if you can't protect the most vulnerable living things in your population, we do more to protect turtles and turtle eggs than we do to protect babies, but that's probably a discussion for a whole other day. And it's a very good discussion, and I'm very passionate about that one, so I'll just leave that there. But I admire Teresa Clifton. I don't mean to send you out, Teresa. Teresa, yeah, she's amazing because she is actually the perfect balance of an animal rights advocate and somebody who puts her whole heart and soul into it, but understands the reality because we dealt with that. And how long did we talk about feral cats and community cats? And that's a subject that makes people angry because no one wants stray cats in their neighborhood, but yet what's the solution? Are you okay with us just doing a mass euthanization of all the cats? Some would say yes. Most of us would say there's got to be a better way. So I think you provide that balance, Teresa. So I appreciate you being there. We need to bounce something off of you because I know that you look at things logically, but you look at things with a caring heart. So thank you for what you do for our community. And I didn't mean to center you out, but I got excited when I saw you here because I'm like, okay, there's a nice middle of the road voice of reason and I think I'm a lot like you in that way where I want to do what I can to help, but without causing too much grief or too much hindrance to businesses or otherwise. But I don't care whose business it is. You profit off of the selling of living things. So that doesn't make you necessarily a bad person, but that requires you to be a good steward of that process. You have to take care of the animals you have, and if you don't know where they're coming from, or you're getting them through a broker, and you can't identify whether or not that it's coming from a puppy mill, well then shame on you, whether that be the gentleman locally, whether that be the gentleman in the next city. But I think that's the only reason why I'm okay with this, is that these are animals. You don't have to watch a Sarah McLachlan commercial to give a crap about animals. But I'll just leave it at that. I think this is a happy medium because, like Commissioner Lober said, he's not totally thrilled with it. His would have been much stronger, but I think we found a nice middle ground. And I think if we're all doing the right things, both as a business and both as a community, then we're taking care of our animals and we're making sure that businesses are doing the same. So I'll support this. I said it wasn't going to be long. I'm sorry.
Still faster than me.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, not to throw a wrench in this little love fest you guys have going on up here, but I can't support this. From the beginning, I wasn't happy with the idea. I didn't think originally it was supposed to stop puppy mills. This hasn't done anything for that. It doesn't demonstrate anything that's going to stop puppy mills. I don't think it protects any animals. I understand that there's some people that are very, very concerned on both sides. I don't think, as it's already been mentioned, it helps either side. Chiefly, I'm concerned with unintended consequences of this. So that means we're going to be back here with all these folks and all of us, and we're going to spend another 3 hours with the unintended consequences because we're not going to let them go. Number two, as I've already said, it has no effect on puppy mills here, anywhere, just doesn't. And for me, I'm a free market guy. Marketplace generally determines the longevity of any business. If you're doing a good job, you stay in business. This guy's been in business 22 years. If you're not doing a good job, you go by the wayside. That's just the way it works. This is a free market society. So for all those reasons, I can't support this. So my vote will be no.
Okay, we're done talking?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
No.
So it's 3-2. Item passes with Commissioner Lober, or Commissioner Tobias and Commissioner Smith voting no. All right.
Moving right along.
Thank you.
Everybody ready for another break?
A little bit of one.
I will.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a break? Sure.
I can just get up and leave.
Huh?
I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want 5 minutes?
You guys want 5 minutes?
Whatever the chair wants.
I'm asking you guys.
I mean, if no one else does, I'll go through.
You want 5 minutes?
I was just going to go to the restroom for
Okay.
a second.
Why don't we take 5 minutes?
At the request of a commissioner, I'm going to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.